although I wanted to move 6 months ago, I believe the delay in the process, as Commissioner O'Brien has brought out, he took the time to examine and look, assess, talk with individuals, as I have, and I'm sure my counterparts have. But without that, you might not have had the strength and momentum for this to be going the way it's going, or appears to be going now. So I want to thank Ms. Capobianco, because there were countless calls, contacts, and she personally was inundated with a lot of calls for concern, and just got to look at Facebook to see how much it was overwhelming. So thank you, Ms. Capobianco.
Very good. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this? Yes, ma'am. Name and address to the record, please.
My name is McGee. I live at 2125 Buena Vista Boulevard in Vero Beach, Florida. I'm the executive director of the Humane Society of Vero Beach in Indian River County. I moved here in January of this year from Kansas, which is the #3 worst puppy mill state in the country. And I worked as the president of the Midwest Alliance for Animals on legislation to improve the standards of care at these breeding facilities at a state level and a local level. And I can tell you, Commissioner O'Brien is absolutely right. That's not going to change. Year after year, going to Topeka to testify about the conditions, about how these inspections are not happening, and even if they are happening, the rules of enforcement for proper and humane care are not at best practices in any of the states that are providing pets to these pet stores. We know that good breeders, hobby breeders, the type like we have in Sebastian, they care where their dogs go. They care very much about making sure that their pets are going to the right homes. Any animal sold in a pet store is not coming from a breeder like that. So I want to commend all of you on working on this. I've spoken with Mr. DeBrawl, and I would love the opportunity to work with the county attorney's office on some of the language as well. I think this is a wonderful step for our community to take right now. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else from the public? There being none, we have the motion from Commissioner Flesher.
Nope.
Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. I'm Amy Robinson, 1935 Surfside Terrace in Vero Beach. And I wanted you to consider a couple of things in your ordinance. I thought it was very well written. One would be to the vice chairman's point about the hobby breeder. She has a couple of litters a year. That is not technically, she's not technically a hobby breeder based on the definition in the proposed ordinance. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think someone like that is doing a good job now, but could easily try to increase the volume later, which affects her neighbors and potentially also affects the quality of care that the puppies are getting, et cetera. So I don't necessarily think it would be a bad thing to regulate somebody who's breeding a certain number of dogs a year. And the other thing that might be a very interesting prospect is a breeder's tax. If you are advertising in the newspaper or on social media and you are selling puppies in that way, perhaps it would not be a bad idea to consider a breeder's tax, where this entity or private person would pay anywhere from, I don't know, $300 to $800 a year for the ability to advertise their retail sales of puppies. So that might be something to consider in your writing of the statute. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else from the public? There being none, the motion is by Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Zork. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now move on to Commissioners' open dialogue. Commissioner Zork.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder, tonight, 6 o'clock, if you want more information on foster care, that'll be at the Hampton Inn, downtown Vero Beach on 6th Avenue. Recent happenings, attended the Airport Commission meeting, and there was a significant presentation made by a group called American Aviation University, which is looking to bring a training facility to the Vero Beach Airport, not for pilot training, but for all the aspects related to aviation, from landing gear to avionics to radios, those types of things, all the back-end operations that go with the aviation business. And their goal would be, at full capacity, be at 2,000 students, which would be a significant benefit to the airport and to those on the aviation manufacturing side. Secondly, and also an item that came up at that meeting, was a fee-based natural gas line extension coming from Piper, going west to 43rd Avenue and north to the what's called the North Ramp area, where Gerard Equipment is looking at relocating. If that line does come into place, it may be something that the county would like to look at, a fee-based extension to the jail. There could be considerable savings of changing from propane to natural gas. And we'll just kind of monitor that and see as that moves forward. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. As you guys may recall, at the last open dialogue, I mentioned the code enforcement brochure, and staff did have something provided to me that was awesome. I'm glad we had that. I was able to use that at the VLE property owners meeting that was held earlier this month. That meeting, we had the code enforcement officer, Mr. Allred, there to speak to the group, and he was able to use that brochure and hand out to the residents regarding the top code enforcement violations and ways they could keep from having a violation. And he was very well received by the group, and I'm very thankful for him for showing up. They've been asking for a code enforcement officer to come to talk to them for quite some time, so thank you for that. I also, Jason, I've noticed that the departments and the county in general are posting more on social media, and I think that's a great way to reach out and message to the public about what's going on, and I would encourage them to continue to do that. That's been a great way to share what we're doing. And then the last thing for my fellow commissioners, on Friday at the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, we'll be having an algae presentation by Dr. James Sullivan, who is the Executive Director of Harbor Branch, and he was also recently appointed to the Governor's Blue-Green Algae Task Force. So we're very lucky that we kind of scheduled him before he was appointed, because I'm sure it would be very difficult to get him to come now. But it should be a very interesting conversation, and if any of you are interested in going, I would encourage you. Commissioner O'Brien and I will be there. But if there's anything specific you might want to know from him, we're happy to carry that message down there. But that's all I have, and thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the May meeting, the Treasure Coast Council Local Governments, we got an update on the unemployment rate in the county. It's still at 3.7%, which is basically full employment. At this point, the only people not working are the ones that don't want to work. And there's a lot of open jobs posted out there now. So from an employment point of view, we're looking fairly good. And then on Friday, the 24th, the Regional Planning Council is hosting a tour of the McClarity Ranch project, which is a water storage and treatment project that is being fully developed by the city of Port St. Lucie. So if you're interested in taking that tour, contact Stephanie with the Regional Planning Council for the directions and all that good stuff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you to my colleagues and the citizens, and specifically to our legislative team, our senator and representative, as the passage, and thank you to the governor for signing the texting while driving bill. I know there was talk here of maybe not having it on legislative priority, and although we did send our correspondence and support, it is quite rewarding that it has gone through passage. By your support, we may have saved lives. There's actually an individual in a room that has been victimized twice by a texting while driving. On Friday, I witnessed one, and late at night, there was another crash just right down the road, and there was the lit cell phone on the dashboard underneath the windshield, and unfortunately that person was not moving so quickly. So I want to say that I'm quite rewarded that it happened for the citizens. And once again, thank you.
Thank you, and with that, we are adjourned.